Hello, and today we're going to explore 4 foundational modeling tools in Blender's edit mode that help shape and detail our 3D objects. And they are loop cuts, extrude faces, bevel edges, and inset faces. And you can see an example of each just here. Okay, so we've got a default cube, and then I've just used the default cube, I've duplicated it to show you what each ones of these are. We'll start with a loop cut, okay? And this is a tool for adding new edge loops to your geometry, allowing more control over shape and topology. It's great for refining forms or for preparing geometry for animation. And then next we'll go to extrude faces, and this is a tool that creates new geometry by extending selected faces or edges, often used to build out 3D shapes from a flat surface. Bevel edges, that's the next one, and this one smooths out sharp edges by adding a chamfer or rounded transition, giving a model a more realism. And then the last one is inset faces. This creates a smaller offset face within a selected face, and this is useful for adding details like panels, buttons, or structural complexity. And what we're going to do today to have a quick play with all of these is I've just, on the screen, you'll notice that I've added a small, it's a plane, it's not a cube, just a 2D plane, and on it I've added a texture, and we'll go over adding textures shortly in the course. But for now, just to showcase these 4 tools, I'm going to try and bring this 2D image, and if I just turn off texture, you'll see it's just a plane. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices. It doesn't look like a crate when we look at just the mesh, but if I add a texture and I come out of edit mode, actually, no, I'll go back to solid shading and enable textures. It's a bit clearer for what we're doing. You can see this looks good already, but it's not going to capture the light. The shadows are pretty static. It's not fun. So how can we use loop cut, extrude faces, bevel edges, inset faces, and a couple of other little quick tools just to sort of bring this shape out and explain these tools to you. So what we're going to do is we'll start with loop cuts. And I'll come onto top view and I'll go into edit mode. Okay, so I'm going to use the picture of this cube to help me out here and make it just a bit nicer for you guys to look at. And we're going to add a loop cut. Now we could use the tools just here, and loop cut is down here on the center. And in edit mode, once I've selected loop cut, once I come across to my model and I select an edge, you'll notice that a yellow line appears. And this is just sort of foreshadowing where would you like your loop cut to be. Okay, so I'm going to click just here, and you'll notice that once I click, it is set in place. I can't adjust it, okay? That's the benefit of using the modifier. So I'm going to undo that, and you can come down here and loop cut. You can see it doesn't actually have a modified guide on here. And the loop cut shortcut is Control and R, okay? And then once I put my mouse over an edge, you will see we get the same yellow line. But this time, if I use my middle mouse button before I click here, you'll notice I can add in multiple loops, okay? And let's just do that for now. That's about the right width. And once I've clicked, let me just do that again. Control and R, select a loop cut, add in a few. Okay, you can see I can't move them up and down the mesh. I can just select what side and which direction I want them going on. Okay, so we'll do here now. I can click once, and now I can slide them along that geometry, okay? And that's very useful. If I just want them in the center and I'm up here, I can right click and it will snap to the center, the median point of that face. Once I've done that, this menu will appear, and you'll notice with nearly every tool that we use, once you've set it in place, it will give you options that pop up just down here in the bottom left. I'm just going to open this and we're going to have a little look at what this is. So number of cuts, it's pretty self-explanatory. If I lower that down to 2, you can see we've only got 2. Smoothness. Now, I don't know what this is like on a plane. I've done it on 3D models, but when you do this on an object, say like a cube, if I just show you, if I just add in a series of loop cuts, okay, and come down to smoothness, you'll notice when I adjust this, look what it does to the mesh. So we're already starting to add some complexity just to a cube. Okay, I'm going to undo that, come back to our 2D plane. I'm just going to remove these 2. I can either delete and then come down to dissolve edges, or undo that, or the shortcut is X and dissolve edges. But there is actually a shortcut for specifically dissolving, okay? So if I select multiple edges and press Control and X, it will dissolve them. It doesn't delete them. There is a difference. If I delete edges, so this top menu is deleting, removing, getting rid of everything attached to that. This is just dissolving the bit that you are connected, you are selected, okay? And that's what we were trying to do at the minute. If I go to delete edges, it deletes the whole thing. Why is that? Well, this edge here, if I just turn off the texture and make it a bit darker for us. So this edge is connected to this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge, okay? And then vice versa for this one as well. And if you imagine, if I delete all of these, I'm only left with two edges. We don't have a face to showcase as our mesh. So we don't want to delete, we just want to dissolve. And that's X, dissolve edges, or Control X to dissolve straight away. So let's add in those loop cuts again with Control R. And this time I'm going to add one. I'm going to bring back that lovely crate texture. And now I've set it in place. I haven't adjusted anything, it's good as it is, but I now want to move it. How do I do that? Well, I can press G to grab it, but you'll notice that moves all the texture as well. It's not ideal. We can see if I try and move it up to this edge here, it moves the whole texture with it. If I double press G, you can see now it slides that loop along the face without affecting the texture. And then if I hold Shift, because I have snapping turned on with increment, I'll leave it on for now. You can see if I press G to slide, you'll see it's snapping to the grid. You can see it's snapping to these grid squares just here. Okay, and then when I get up here, it just goes either side. It's not very good. So what I need to do is just finesse this by holding Shift. And I can do smaller increments and get it right in the right place. There we go. So now I'm going to do the same for these edges. So Control R. And this time before clicking, I'm going to set it roughly where that looks good. So it's best just to do loop slides as manually as you can, and then you can affect the geometry and it doesn't affect the texture below or attached. Let me just turn that off. So now you can see I can select these edges around the edge. Sorry, these faces around the edge. If I come back to texture, that is the raised part of the crate, but we've also got this bit in the middle. So what's going to be the best way to do that? So we're going to introduce you to a new tool, and this is the joining tool. This works with vertex to vertex, as opposed to the face tool, which works with anything that you select to another edge. So if I'll show you what I mean with that. I'm in edit mode. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to hold Shift and D to duplicate and just bring this over here for an example. Now we've got two bits here of our mesh. Now if I go into object mode, these are the same object, but we've got two bits of mesh. And sometimes you don't want that. You'd like to join this center. Let me just remove the texture and we'll forget it's a crate for a second. Imagine I wanted to join this edge to this edge, okay? Well, if I do that, that looks great. But if I then select all of this by holding my mouse over it and pressing L and then G to move it, you'll notice it's not attached. It looks like it's attached, but it's not. It's just freestanding still. So let's just undo that. And what we can do is we can click on the two edges that are opposite with the area that I'd like to fill up and press F, and that will fill it. Okay, that's good for creating new faces. Blender's very good at working out what you want it to do. So I just selected this edge and this edge, pressed F, and it worked out that this is what I wanted. And there's another option called joining. Now, if I come to this vertex and this vertex, remember we're doing that middle bar on the crate, and I press F, that looks like a good starting point for us. But the problem we've got here is this edge is actually above this lower face. What we really want to happen is it to cut this face in half and give us two tries, okay, rather than one quad with a floating edge above it. So if I just undo that, and with those two vertices selected, instead of filling that gap between them, we're going to join it by pressing J. Okay. Now, if I go into face select mode, you'll see these are two individual faces as opposed to using fill, which creates a single face. This is not ideal. This edge is useless. It will create all sorts of issues, especially if this is a deforming mesh. I'm just going to dissolve this by compressing Ctrl and X. Didn't work. It didn't work because dissolve works when you've got edges that are part of geometry. Like I've got a face here, here, and here, which all rely on these edges. So these can be dissolved, as you can see. But this is just an edge on its own. Even though it looks like it's attached, you can see I can see it below and above. It looks correct. It's not. If I move it, it's moving this vertice point and this vertice point. If I was to subdivide by right-clicking and grab that middle vertex and lift it up, you'll notice that edge is not attached. If I come to this edge and right-click subdivide and then grab this center vertex, it is attached. You see the difference? And even now we've got two faces, we can see what's going on. So I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to dissolve those edges and I'm going to delete those edges. I'm also going to hold my mouse over here in face select mode and press L, and that just grabs everything to do with that bit of mesh. Hit X and I'm going to delete everything. Bye bye. So using that, we've just learned about the join tool. What we're going to do is we're going to get this vertice and this vertice, and we're going to join in between with J. And that's a good starting point, I think. If I come into edit mode, that's already starting to look like our mesh, our crate. Now, I'm having to change between this mode, texture mode, in solid shading mode, come to the arrow, lots of things to adjust here. I'm using texture at the minute to enable textures in solid shading, but I kind of don't want to do that. I want to see what I'm working on, and I'm going to remove the material. We'll go into materials in one of the next lessons, and I'm going to work on this one moving forwards. So I have been working on this one. I just duplicated it, and I just pressed F2 then to rename our crate. Cool. So that's loop cuts. We've managed to do the sides, the top and the bottom, and then we've joined a cut down the middle. How are we now going to create the 3D aesthetic, that sort of pop? How do we bring these shapes out? Well, we've just done that, so let's hide loop cut. Actually, I'll leave that there for you to see. We'll use Extrude Faces next. Now, what's extruding? If I come into edit mode, come up to face select, and let's choose these to start with, okay? I was just holding control then, so there is a difference. If I hold shift, you see I can select multiple faces, but it is literally just selecting the faces that I'm clicking on. If I want to go all the way around here, and they're nice quads, it won't work so well with triangles, but they're quads, I can select one, go to another, hold control and left mouse button click, and it will draw a line from that selection to the current selection. It's not always the best. If I just go back and then come to here, you'll see it doesn't do quite what I want. So sometimes you need to click a few times and just guide it along the way. If I come into the toolbar and we find Extrude, so we've got Extrude region here, and I click on that, as our tools normally do, it offers us a gimbal. If you select this white circle or click anywhere in the circle that's not on the yellow, this will be a free extrude, and you'll see we have got snapping on at the minute, which makes it a bit easier, but I can extrude this in any direction. If I just undo that, turn off snapping, there we go. I can now extrude this any which way I want. Normally when you extrude, you do want to constrain it to an axis, and when you hit that gimbal, that yellow plus sign, what's happening now is, I know it looks like the Z-axis, but it's actually extruding all of these faces along something that's called their normals. If I come up here to Mesh Edit Mode Overlays and come down to Normals and then click this one, okay, these little blue lines, that's a normal. And that's the direction the face should face in a nutshell. If I come up here to show overlays and turn on face orientation, it's changed a bit. So it used to be blue when you did that, but it does remain red if it's incorrect. And if I go underneath the mesh, you can see it's all red. And there's none of those little yellow, blue directional lines coming out of it. Now, a normal is just saying this is the direction of the face. And what this means is when light comes along and hits this face, it knows that this is a face and it'll bounce off. And that's how light works. That's how we see color. And that's what we want. We don't want to see any red, because what happens here, it's known as back face culling. If we've got a red face, so say this is our crate and this face here is red, when a bit of light hits it, instead of bouncing off it, what will happen is the light will come along, see that the face is facing the wrong direction and presume that we want that, and the light will continue to go through. It won't bounce off, and we'll get some weirdness with our shading. So let me just delete those. And let me turn off normals. That's our normals, okay? Face direction, edge and vertice normals. And I'm just going to turn them off because they get a bit messy. There we go. Right, so that was extrude. We can hit the gimbal. As always, there is a shortcut. And this one's nice and easy. It's E. Okay? And you can constrain it to axes as before. And we want to bring it up to probably just about there. And that's what extruding is. It's bringing faces out. It creates geometry. What you will notice is if I extrude this face here, and then we look underneath, it takes that face with it up to the top. It doesn't fill this cap. Okay, so we're going to go over what beveling is in a second when we've got a bit more of a 3D object to play with. And you can see this cube. And like I said, it adds a sort of a chamfer. It adds a bit of a smooth edges, and you can round these off as well. And they're really nice to work with. Before we get to the 3D aspect of beveling, I just want to show you another good way of using it. So if I come down to our crates that we're creating and this edge, if I hit bevel, so when I hit that, you can see it turns that single line. Ooh. Let me just bring that loop back. There we go. If I press Control and B for bevel, it creates two lines from that singular area. Now I'm not going to go too far into it now in 2D space. It will make a lot more sense with 3D. By doing that, Control B, you can see now we've got this central beam that we want. This isn't ideal though. We have got here an n-gon. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges, which we do not want. And we need to fix that. And it's always easiest to fix that at the beginning when it's easiest to do so. So what I'm going to do is using the join tool, I'm going to collect these two and join them, these two, and join them. And then do the same down here. And join. Okay. Let's dissolve a few edges first. So let's dissolve these edges with Control X, and then these edges with Control X. Okay, we're getting there. But now this is a massive n-gon. Look at this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges. Well, let's join these two vertices together down the middle. And now we've got it. So we've got a quad, a quad, a quad, all the way around. So I'm recording from the future. I noticed a mistake that I made. So I just wanted to adjust, just in case you'd noticed. We'd fixed the n-gon that was up here, and we've created this edge down the center line of our mesh. But we forgot to do here. If we look, this is still an n-gon because it's got, if I go into edge select mode, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. So this is still an n-gon. Even though it's shaped like a cube or a quad, it's got this vertex here or this vertex here, which creates an extra edge. So we need to fix that. Now, you might have seen earlier on, I quickly just did a demonstration and I used something called a subdivide. So if I select two vertices, or in edge select mode, select this edge and right click on it, okay, it brings up the edge menu. Now, if I was in face and I selected this one and I went right click, it would bring up the face menu. So depending what mode you're in, and the right click depends on what menu you get with that right click. So with edge mode, this one here, if I go right click subdivide, it doesn't look like much on the offset because the color is a little bit hard to see. If I just make it a bit darker, that's easier, isn't it? If I go to vertice select, you can now see we've got a floating vertex on this edge. Now, once again, I can use, if I just put my screencast keys on so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, if I just press double G, there we go, and move it along, I can put it roughly where I want, but we can put it exactly where I want, opposite this one, with snapping. If I turn snapping on, come to the menu, and let's align it with a vertex. So this options is how do you want to align what you're snapping, and I want to align a vertex with a vertex. So double G, move it along, you see it's still free until I move my mouse down, and then it snaps to that vertex just there. Thank you, Blender, for putting that on. That's fairly new that you can see that, and doing my first recording like this, it makes it a lot easier to show you guys what I'm trying to showcase. Let's do it for this edge. Click this edge, right click, subdivide, go to vertice select, select the vertice, double G, in snapping mode with vertex select option, move it up and snap to this vertex, please. And that orange box is what I was just talking about. That's a new thing in Blender and it's lovely. I really like it. It's the little things. Let's do the same for these two. I can multiple select, right click and subdivide, go to vertex select mode, and then you can see we've now got two vertices. So you can do it with multiple edges at the same time. Let's slide that along, snap it here. Let's slide that along, snap it here. And then as I've just shown you, let's join these two vertices together across the mesh with J, join. And here, and here. There we go. I just noticed that when I was watching the video back, so that's important. Even though it looks like a quad, if it's got that extra edge, it becomes an n-gon, and it can just become a bit of a pain when it comes to texturing later on. That you might have got away with, but any chance if this was, say, a part of clothing, like say a square of a sheet of fabric, and whilst it was being manipulated as a piece of cloth, that vertex comes over here, it will really affect that texture. You'll really see that stretch in the middle of a fabric that looks maybe perfect. A quad all the way around. We've got a try, which is fine. Quad, quad, and try. You'll notice that loop cuts are working, kind of, but because of these two triangles, it does still throw a few errors. That we can go back, before we move on to beveling again, we can go back to extrude. So if I select all the way around, and I'm just holding control, and now I'm going to shift and left mouse button those two pieces, and press period on my numpad just to bring that to the center of my view again. We can see now I've got all the relevant selection, all the areas selected. We can now extrude. And let's use this one just to show you how it works again. Bring that up. You know what, that'll do, I think. And then I'm going to unselect by holding shift and just left mouse button those two faces. I'm going to do it again. Okay, now if I come out to object mode, and we're already starting to create what looks like a crate, just from a 2D plane with loop cuts and extruding and a little bit of beveling. You can see here, even on this picture, if we look down the edges of it, you can see we've got sort of dinks, dings. It's a bit softer. It's not rigid. If you look at this, we've got this edge here. Okay, it's just so rigid. It's so 90 degrees. And a wooden crate definitely wouldn't. You've got, even these have got little dinks and dips in them. This has all got some scarring and some damage to it. Nothing here is telling me 90-degree edge. And that's what a bevel is for. Now we do have a modifier called bevel, okay? And we'll go into the modifiers a bit later, but we're going to manually bevel this. So what does that mean? Well, if I just come down here and select a few of these corner pieces just here, and then control and zoom in, I might just change the color just to make it look a little bit clearer. There we go. And Alt and middle mouse button here, just to focus on this corner. If I come across to bevel, with those edges selected, okay, and I bevel them, you can see what it's done there is it's add this chamfer, it's added this soft edge. If I just undo that, and we come and use the modifier, and the modifier for a bevel is Control B. Okay, you can see it's the same thing, but this time, because I'm using the modifier, before I click to set that in place, I can use the middle mouse wheel, and I can add in a bit more smoothness. There we go. And if I just right click shade smooth, you'll see what that's done. It's just smoothed off that corner. It's no longer a hard 90 degrees. If I go auto smooth, you'll see the difference in our edges. See how that one's so rigid and that one's nice and smooth. Not a bad job, but not a great job either. So let's just undo that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these outside edges. I'm just going to focus on this and remove everything else from the screen. Focus on this with /, and then we can always bring everything back with / again. I'm just holding control, clicking all the way around. Now I'm just holding shift. We want the inside edge as well, so shift click and then control all the way around. And I think we want these two edges with shift click left mouse button as well. That looks like it could be good. I might come back and redo this in a second if these don't go right. Before we do any beveling though, let's go to object mode, bring up our sidebar and make sure our scale is 1. Yep, you know what, everything's good. Doesn't matter about the location. As long as your scaling is 1 and it's not all different values, that can make beveling especially go awry and go really weird. So back into edit mode, everything's still selected. You can either come over here and use bevel, or you can use Control and B. And we're just going to add in that much of a bevel. I'm just going to remove the that rounding and just have the 1 division. And there we go. That's already looking miles better. If I put / up into the top, you can see already we're getting a lot more realism. Those softer edges really do help. They add a bit more light, okay? If I just undo that, you can see what it does. It just breaks it all up a little bit, adds a bit more softness. The last thing we're going to go over is insetting of faces, okay? Creating smaller offset faces within a selected face. Now what we'll do this time is I'm actually going to delete. I'm going to come into edit mode, come to face select mode, select these two faces and press delete and faces so we can see through our mesh. I then want the 3D cursor to be here. So I'm going to press Shift and S to bring up the wheel. And I want the cursor to come to the selected object. There we go. And now I want to add a plane. And that just means it's right in the right location. And we're going to use Inset Faces now. So with that plane, if I just bring that out, wood slats, okay, we're going to create these bits of wood just here. So if I go into edit mode, let's add in 1, 2, 3, I reckon for 5 loop cuts. Yep, that looks good. Now just set them straight in place. We're going to go to Inset Faces now, aren't we? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can see I'm just going to focus on this. These are all going to be individual planks of wood. So unfocus. I'll just come across to here. And you can see what Inset Faces are is it takes the entire face and then it insets a smaller offset face inside. So let's do that. So I'm going to select everything on this plane with A. And I'm going to come across to Inset. Now, which one's Inset? There we go. And if I just do 1 for now to show you, if I just click here and then move my mouse, you can see it doesn't really seem to be doing much. Okay, can be a few issues with Inset Faces. To start with, normally you need to do it once, come in, hit individual, and then change your thickness, and it'll do something. There we go. Now we're getting the right sort of behaviors. I'm just going to undo that. Select all with A, and instead of using the tool, we'll use I for inset. And you can see now it's working absolutely perfectly. If yours still isn't working, if yours is doing that, you can see I've got this dotted line and I'm moving it and nothing seems to be happening, okay? Press I again, a second time. It now works, look at that, okay? So we're gonna create some slats. So we just want a little gap between these pieces. And straight away, I've already got all the correct pieces of my mesh selected. So I'm going to press E to extrude. And let's just bring them up a little bit. And then once again, with everything selected, I'm actually going to hit scale. And you can see everything scaling around the 3D cursor. So if I come up to this middle mouse button, this middle menu just here, it's going over the medium point, which in this case is the 3D cursor, but it's the middle point of all the selected bits of mesh. So if I come down to individual origins and scale again, you'll see now each individual one of those edited areas is scaling on its own accord, which is what we want. And I'm going to set that there and come out and into object mode. And there we go. Just using a loop cut, extrude, bevel in different ways, and an inset face, I've taken this reference image here, and I've created 2 bits of mesh, which equal what we're aiming for. And then if I wanted to, I could start texturing this, adding in detail like screws, nuts, bolts, chips of wood, and we could go as far as we want. The last thing I'll do here today with you is to join these 2 bits of mesh together. So I've got the wooden planks and I've got the outside frame of the box as well. Now, it's important, if we were building this on a cube, if you imagine this was 3D, so if I rotate that 90 degrees, rotate that 90 degrees on the x-axis, if you imagine this was, let's actually build it for you. I just duplicate Shift and D on the Y by 2, okay, and then rotate that by 180 degrees on the Z axis. And we know it's the right way because we can see the red faces. Let's do the same for this rear face, this set of planks. So Shift D to duplicate, right click to set it back in place, rotate on the Z by 180 degrees. Okay, now grab that on the Y axis by 2 meters. There we go. And let's just keep doing that, shall we? Let's go from this mesh. I want to select that bit and this bit. If I press Shift S and cursor to selected, now I've got 2 bits selected. So what it'll do is it'll put the cursor between the 2 of them. There we go. If I just box select everything here and then Shift and D and then right click to put it back in place, and then rotate on the Z axis by 90, it's set to individual origins, and this time I don't want that. So let's set this to medium points. Now if I rotate that on the Z by 90, there we go. And let's Shift and D those 2, right click to put them back in place, rotate on the Y axis by 90 degrees, there we go. Look at that. I very quickly just made a crate or a pallet. It's not perfect. We could go in and just move these in a little bit. And to be honest, it's probably got a lot of geometry that's wasted, but you can see what we're going for just here. And if I wanted to turn this into a single object, I'm in object mode, and you can notice I can click on all these individual pieces and they all move on their own accord. If I wanted this all to be one single object, okay, let me just hide this. I'm just going to go into wireframe mode for this, go to the top, and now I can press Ctrl and J and I join that together. I can come to object, come down to join, and do the same thing. And now in object mode, when I click away, click back, this is an entire mesh. Now, if I go into edit mode, it's still made up of all those things. So I can select this, move it away. I can select that. I'm using L to just grab everything that's linked to this face. Okay. You can see I can still grab all the individual pieces. In object mode, this is now a crate. And we made that with extrude faces, bevel edges, and inset faces. We also used loop cuts. Ooh, that was a lot to take in half an hour. Those tools are essential. If you can get your head around those and the lessons that we've had previous to this, you're off to a good start. In the next lesson, we're going to look at textures, materials, and UV maps. And then, with all the knowledge that you've gained in the previous lessons, we can start building our first assets together.